So Hannah and Emily are going to talk to us about their rotation in China. Emily.
Hi, so I'm Hannah Snyder. I am in my 4th year of pharmacy school at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha. Throughout school, I've worked at retail pharmacy, Walmart, where I do most of my experiences there. But throughout this year, we've been on, total we'll be on 10 different rotations. Each of them is 4 weeks. And one of those, it was in China on rotation.
I'm Emily Prince. I'm also a 4th year at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, and I'm kind of a little opposite of Hannah. I've spent my last 4 years working on the inpatient side at Nebraska Medicine, and like she said, this last year we've gone out and been on rotations, and we've had a lot of different experiences. We were able to do some inpatient, some ambulatory care, more of our outpatient clinic settings, and then also had this opportunity to do a China rotation.
Okay, so why don't you guys tell me exactly where you were in China, the city you were in, and the type of setting, hospital I think you worked in. If you can tell us the name of the hospital, and then how long you were there. Kind of tell us some of the different things that you did while you were there and what you noticed, the differences in the workflow of pharmacy than what you've seen in the United States.
Okay. So the city we were in is Chengdu, China. In that city is the hospital we were rotating on, called West China
Women's and Children's Hospital.
Yes.
And it was purely just a women's and children's hospital, like we said. So we saw a lot of those disease states more than anything, along with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the big things, a lot of cancer in children. The biggest thing I think we would both say that we noticed was the amount of people. There's so many people and the amount of prescriptions that you see and that the pharmacists see there every day. We would always compare it to almost being in an airport. You walk in the hospital and it's just tons of people everywhere. It's crazy.
Okay, so let's talk about the similarities and the differences maybe. As far as dress code, do the pharmacists wear white coats in China?
They do. They get to wear, they're longer than what we are used to. And
short sleeve.
Yes. Short
Which
sleeve.
was different.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what about in the pharmacy that you worked at? Were there technicians? Were there helpers? Were they named technicians, or did they go by a different name?
Okay, there were, I would say, helpers. They never ever called them technicians. And the way the workflow would kind of go is somehow they would get these prescriptions, whether it was e-prescribed or what it was. We really don't know how they got the prescriptions to start. And the technicians would go in the back and grab all the bottles. They never counted out pills. It was always just full bottles. And then they would kind of set them up on a shelf, or is kind of what I would call it, a counter. And they would leave it there for the pharmacist to check. And then checking was more when the patient actually came and brought their prescription. The pharmacist would then go grab this basket and look, and they would be the last one to ever see the medications and give it to the patient before it ever went out, which I feel like that's different there as compared to here, where we have to ask if it's a brand new prescription, if they want to be counseled, but it has to be a pharmacist handing it over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so are the meds prepared ahead of time? And are there like bins, or are they how is that different, the actual dispensing?
So like back in the pharmacy, in the outpatient pharmacy, there's just shelves of medication like we're kind of used to here in America. What I remember the hospital we were at, so there's like this little key card that the patient, when they're ready to come get their drugs, they would have to swipe this key card, and then that would prompt the pharmacy that this patient's ready to come get their meds. And then that's kind of when that process would start, like Emily described.
But you didn't have it ready days in advance or anything like I feel like we do now. We're calling for refills is not possible.
Okay. So calling for refills doesn't
No.
happen. And tell me about the amount of meds that are dispensed in China versus we're used to a month's supply or 30-day supply. What did you see when you were at your site?
Yeah. It's for any chronic disease state, you could only get a total of 7 days worth of prescription. And then if it was an acute disease state, then it was only 3 days. And in order to get more medication, if it was acute, you had to go see the doctor again. And for chronic, they never talked about how many refills or anything you could get, do they? I don't remember them ever specifically talking about that. But 7 days, which I found very different.
Okay.
And you can tell why. I wish I could remember. Do you remember how many prescriptions they would have in a day? It was
enormous.
Ridiculous. When we would have 600 at some chain store here, excuse me. I mean, it was thousands of prescriptions that they do a day. It didn't even touch it. Made our busy stores seem extremely slow.
Okay. So you're thinking that the reason for, I envision the windows and patients lined up at the windows, waiting in line to get their scripts, and the scripts aren't ready ahead of time as they come up to the window. The medication's pulled, and they're getting at most a 7-day supply. So instead of coming back to the pharmacy once every 30 days, they're there every 7 days,
Correct. Yeah.
which lends to maybe
The reason why it's so
huge
many.
overflow. Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So you talked to me a little bit about the difference in narcotics in China.
The only time you can get a prescription for a narcotic outpatient is if you're a cancer patient, and you can only get a total of 3 days. No other patient can get narcotic prescriptions outpatiently. You can get it inpatient if you're in the hospital, but nobody can take them home.
Okay. What about, let's talk about maybe the career of the pharmacist and the helper. So are the pharmacists considered part of the healthcare team, or what did you notice about maybe the pharmacists as professionals?
I mean, yeah, I would say they were considered part of the healthcare team. When we were on the inpatient side, they would be included in the going on rounds, and they would be really well informed on the patients they were rounding on and make suggestions, kind of like we would do here in America.
Yeah. I would say they don't hear just the way that how much more advanced pharmacy is. We do a lot more, I would say. But you can tell that they're trying, and that's what they're working for. But it's still not verbalized as much as I would say it. I've seen it on rounds inpatiently here, but I know there's a huge difference between where we are studying now at an academic medical center, whereas some other places it would be a lot closer to and more similar, I would say.
Okay. So I think when we talked before, you said how what you have learned is that the medicine in China is not as advanced as it is in the States. And you also talked about traditional Chinese medicine versus Western medicine. Do you want to talk a little bit about the traditional Chinese medicine and what you learned from that experience?
So the patient can actually sort of decide what route they want to go, like if it's traditional Chinese medicine or the Western medicine, even though they can kind of do both if they need to. And that's like the pharmacists there, they also, before they go to school, they pick what kind of medicine they want to be involved in to determine what setting they're working in.
Doctors, I was going to say to go on that too, you have to be prescribed traditional Chinese medicine by a traditional Chinese medicine doctor. The same with Western medicine. It has to be a Western medicine doctor. You go to 2 separate doctors in all reality. You can use both, and a lot of people do. And they still had the same schedule where it was 7 days. You had 7 days of tea most of the time, or 3 if it was an acute setting.
Okay, that's interesting. And I wanted to clarify. So the traditional Chinese medicine is going to be more like the herbals,
Correct.
which would be a lot of teas, probably oral like tablets too, capsules.
Did we ever see tablets?
No, it's really interesting the way they do this traditional Chinese medicine. So there is just like from floor to ceiling these little drawers of different herbals.
Or
And
bugs.
then, yeah.
Or snake skin.
Yeah.
Bugs.
So they there could be like 7 different herbals that they like end up boiling down, and then I think it's something they drink.
Oh, wow.
They'll give you bags full of this,
Mhm.
and it's really weird. They would. We saw 2 different hospitals that did this. One of them had it pre-bagged, where you would just grab it, and the other one had. This was not accurate at all. This little like weigh scale thing where they would just go and they'd be reading their prescription and grab a handful and like kind of weigh it, dump it on this bin, and then go. And then they would have a pharmacist that would check it after they grabbed everything. So they would look through this, what I would call loose herbs and bugs and whatever was all on there, and they'd check the prescription and they'd just be looking at it to see. And then you would mix it all up, separate it into 7 bags if you had 7 days worth. And then do you remember the boiling process? It's you would like boil it for an hour and then dump it off, and you would keep the water. And then you would boil it for another hour, dump it off, and keep it. And you'd have to do like 3 or 4 hours work to get your 1 day's worth
And
of
that's
tea.
the patient's responsibility.
Yes,
because
you get
would
the
dispense dry.
you get the bag.
Okay.
It's like a little brown bag. That's what I
Okay.
would call it,
Oh.
of all your herbs and.
Was
stuff.
there a label on it? Do they have labels like we have here with instructions?
I think it's just
I'm not aware.
like common knowledge to know
Okay.
how to
They
boil
know
it
to-
down.
Okay.
Mhm.
What about what about the Western medicine? Did that have a label with it?
Everything. Do you remember?
I don't think we ever like saw the official one like leave the
Uh-uh.
pharmacy.
Okay.
And I mean, it was all in Chinese.
Oh, okay.
We couldn't read any of it.
So you've talked. That's very interesting. So you've talked about checking.
Uh-huh.
Tell me what the difference is in that checking process than what we see here in the States.
Like the retrospective thing.
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
Well, I don't remember the specifics, but
I don't remember the numbers either.
So pharmacist checks the prescription.
This is inpatient.
Yeah,
Inpatient.
inpatient.
Yeah.
Checks the prescription retrospectively, so after after the patient has received it, then they go back, check the records on the computer to make sure that this prescription was actually accurate.
Mhm.
If it hadn't been accurate, I don't really know what they would do.
Yeah, and a lot of times I feel like the patients were already out of the hospital, like by the time they actually checked this. So it's really, you can't fix what's already happened, but to me it's going back to the doctor and saying,
Helping.
yeah,
for
this
future.
is what you did wrong.
Hmm.
And for all the doctors that say, this is not accurate at all, but say it was for the 40 doctors that were in there and they did 800 prescriptions in a month, they would check like 20.
Okay.
It wasn't even 10%.
Well,
It was
no, it wasn't.
like 5%.
We did the math because we were like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So not every prescription was checked. So
No.
when that prescription left the pharmacy and the outpatient, was it checked though? Because I think you said that the
There it
pharmacist
was.
gave it, but in
Yes.
that inpatient,
No.
it wasn't checked.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Say in your inpatient pharmacy, give me an estimate of how many pharmacists you would see in that pharmacy, and then how many helpers, which we call technicians, would you see? Did it seem kind of like what we see in the States, or more pharmacists than the helpers?
I would definitely say more pharmacists.
More
We weren't
pharmacists.
on the inpatient pharmacy very much.
Okay.
We were more up on the floors with
Doing
them.
the clinical
okay.
things.
Mhm.
Okay.
But from when we were in there, to me, working like inpatiently at a pharmacy, it didn't seem very busy, especially for how many people are in the hospital and stuff like that. But then I also remember the nurses would make the IVs. It wasn't a pharmacist making the IVs.
That's right.